Along the narrow spine of the red keep, candle flame bent in the hush of midnight, and Peter Baelish paused atop a stair that had felt the weight of dragons and dreamers. He stood quite still, listening to the dim heartbeat of the castle, iron groaning in the walls, water whispering through forgotten pipes, servants breathing shallow sleepers, breaths beyond closed doors, until the rhythm matched the pulse in his throat. Coin clinked in his palm, one piece only, spun idly between thumb and forefinger. Gold for thought, gold for memory, gold for promise. Even a single dragon, when handled by a patient alchemist, could melt an empire's sinews. He closed his hand, imagining the metal softening, flowing like sunlit cream, reforging itself into keys, contracts, and quiet concessions no Valyrian steel could win. The night air tasted of sea salt and furnaces. From the tower's high lancet windows drifted the mixed perfume of low-tide slime, resinous torches, peppery Dornish wine spilled in an alley, and geranium oil dabbed behind the ear of a reach woman now dreaming of home. Petyr catalogued every scent as if it were another ledger. Who dined richly tonight? Who abstained? Whose cupbearer allowed a foreign spice to linger? Accounts of the senses. He trusted those more than parchment. Hands might tremble, ink might blot, but the nose betrayed nothing. He smiled at that small certainty, pressed the coin to his lips, and descended. 5 landings below, a guard slumped half awake. Baelish never broke stride. A wink, a murmured joke about the fine weather, a flash of emblem on a purse, barely more than a purse's shadow. And the man lurched aside with dazed gratitude, not even bothering to count the weight. In truth, the pouch held but 3 coppers. Illusion weighed heavier than gold when sprinkled with practiced nonchalance. The guard bowed. Petyr bowed lower. Then he slipped through the postern that led into the belly of the castle, where secrets ripened like fruit behind locked pantry doors. Torchlight here was steady, the sconces refreshed twice nightly on his order, though no steward knew the order's source. Costly, yes, but shadows that flickered too much could birth unwanted reflections in polished steel helms. To hide, one must first be seen exactly as one wishes. A gentleman strolling, ledger in hand, too innocent to lurk. He paused at a junction where 3 corridors met, a trident of stone, perfect. Left, the winding descent to cellars, cheese caves, and the damp niche where certain books were kept conspicuously misshelved. Right, a cramped stair spiraling toward the sprawling servants' lofts, sweet with straw and gossip. Straight on, an unobtrusive door that opened, if cajoled, into the unused wing of Queen Alysanne's library. Tonight he chose forward, and the oak panels swallowed him. His lantern found no cobwebs. The cobwebs had been purchased months ago from a patient spider collector in Fleabottom, and relocated to a less frequented, abandoned stairwell so visiting Master Garms could marvel at their authenticity while never glimpsing this path. Everything had its cost, everything paid its dividend. Gold seldom jingled in these halls, but its echo drummed beneath every flagstone. He emerged at last inside the Queen's library, silent and immense. Stacks soared like midnight cliffs, books slumbered in alcoves, some chained, some hidden behind sliding wooden screens, carved with dancing griffons. Here a man might read his way through a kingdom's unwritten years. Here, too, a clever man might write futures. Petyr knelt at a reading pulpit, brushed imagined dust from its lip, and produced from his sleeve a parchment soft as sparrow down. His personal treasurer's sigil lay faint in one corner, a mockingbird perched on a hoard of coins. He laid the parchment flat and began, no quill, no ink. He merely traced lines with the tip of his smallest finger, speaking each figure under his breath as though reciting prayer. Numbers breathed for him. Lists of minor tourney debts, pallets of Dornish olives moldering on the docks, starch orders inflated by Master Giles for the linens of a princess, soon to outgrow them, 50 barrels of arbor gold rumored cork-tinted, and thus ripe for purchase at a pittance. A Moorish banker quietly desperate to convert letters of credit into hard coin before the triarchy collapsed. Each line of imaginary ink spawned 10 paths, and each path unfurled another coil of power. He fed the coils into one another, braiding them tight until they formed a single rope he could climb straight up the side of destiny. Sword lords swaggered on parade grounds. Knighthood shone. Let them gleam. Gold worked better in thick, invisible shade. Minutes, or an hour, passed. Time's measure failed him when numbers sang. At length he rolled the blank parchment, slid it back beneath his sleeve, and rose. From the far end of the hall came a gentle cough. A silhouette stirred beside a marble bust of some long-dead maester. The man stepped forward, spectacles gleaming. Belgrave, first under-librarian, his trembling hands clutching a set of keys, whose teeth flashed like wolf fangs in the lantern glow. "I took the liberty," Belgrave whispered, "of retrieving the ledgers you requested." Liberty indeed, but the word in his mouth weighed less than a beggar's wish. Petir inclined his head. Belgrave offered a brass ring bearing 3 slim volumes bound in cracked leather. Dust motes danced above them, each speck a monarch of its own minuscule dominion. "Your discretion is gold to me," Petir murmured. Belgrave blushed. He would spend that compliment over and over in his mind, richer thereby than if he'd pocketed a ruby. Petir accepted the ledgers, tucked them beneath one arm, and drifted back the way he'd come. He did not hurry. A man who had paid the world in full need never run. Behind him, the librarian locked chains, barred windows, snuffed torches, actions that, in some, erased even the memory of a visit. Consciousness rewrote itself for a price, and Littlefinger always paid on time. Outside the library's hidden door, the corridor trembled faintly, as though the castle exhaled. No footsteps approached. Good. With a practiced flick, he produced a tiny piece of chalk, scratched an almost invisible sigil on the postern lintel, a circle broken by a downward slash, the cipher for complete acquisition. Somewhere in the gloom, a boy would spy that mark come dawn, discard his brooms, and hurry to the counting house, where a single golden stag waited for him beneath a loose stone. Thus was labor rewarded. Thus was the ledger kept balanced. He climbed again, but not toward bed. Sleep wasted interest. Instead he sought the rookery. Maester Alden found him there, feeding mice to the ravens. The maester's chain rattled, links of gold and silver bright with rare polish. Baelish had supplied that polish, a blend of lemon oil and cinder soot that protected metal from Seagear tarnish. Alden's gratitude was a loyal raven perched forever on Petir's wrist. "What word flies tonight?" Alden asked, though he meant, "Which purse shall I open, old friend?" Petir stroked a glossy wing. "It is not what word flies," he answered, "but what word returns. Dispatch the black and white speckled bird to Gulltown." He handed over a slim scroll sealed in purple wax, the color reserved for royal missives. "Then brew yourself mulled wine. The night is chill." Alden nodded, no questions. In moments, the raven leapt into void, letter secured. Its wings beat once, twice, and vanished among the stars. Petir lingered, listening for the receding echo of claws against slate. He closed his eyes. Beyond the horizon, in the vale, a woman who had once adored him waited on an evening wind to bring hope or ruin. Liza's hopes, ruin's shape, he alone decided their form. Gold had purchased her silence before. Now it would purchase her complicity. He left the rookery by a narrow catwalk and descended toward the small hall where lesser lords took meals away from royal eyes. The chamber was empty at this hour save for servants clearing crumbs. Yet in that emptiness lingered the warmth of earlier commerce, voices, wagers, hints of treason traded for jests. Petir brushed a fingertip across a recently abandoned wine cup, then held it up. A thin red thread clung to his skin. Arbor red, midsummer cask, expensive. Only a certain Stormlander knight favored that vintage, and the Stormlander owed dice or debts across half the realm. Debts were a currency twice minted. Paid once in coin, paid again in obedience. He drifted between benches, collecting such fragments, a half-gnawed capon bone flavored with saffron, proof a shy Taroshi envoy had dined here after spurning the court feast, perhaps fearing poison, perhaps preferring quiet persuasion from a man like Littlefinger. Beyond that lay a shred of lavender silk fallen from a lady's sleeve. Lavender, house, Seri. The girl's dowry was rumored thin. Petir could fatten it by morning for a price. He gathered morsels of narrative as a jeweler gathered gems, pocketing each for later setting. At last he reached a raised dais where a modest empty chair sat in shadow. Not the Iron Throne, merely an oaken seat worn smooth by generations of under-kings and acting hands. He ran his fingers along its arm, feeling grooves where anxious nails had chewed the grain. His reflection shimmered in a nearby flagon of watered wine. In that rippled surface, he looked princely, blurred by destiny's current. He took the seat. All stretched silent as a cathedral nave. Petir folded his hands upon his knee and pictured the true throne, all jagged blades and sullen majesty. Swords demanded blood. Gold demanded only belief, and belief could be spun, oh so delicately, like a spider's strand between lovers, friends, foes. He had learned early that men died for honor, but lived for profit. Show them the profit, and their honor would gallop to catch up. He sat unmoving, letting thoughts swirl. How to balance Tyrell avarice against Lannister pride. How to lure Seaworth silver into a shallow harbor investment. How to seed the stepstones with controlled chaos so taxes on grain convoys might quietly triple, without blame returning to the crown. One by one he weighed the realms' beating hearts in his palm, measured their desire, then set the price. Somewhere a bell told the half hour past midnight. Petir rose. Even a spider must eventually return to its center. He slipped from the dais and stepped through a servant's passage that spat him, moments later, into the quiet gallery outside the hand solar. Lord Tywin was away tonight, summoned by some urgent Riverlands report. The solar's lacquered door stood closed, but unbarred. Baelish laid a hand on the latch. He did not enter. He only listened to the stillness, feeling how the absence of a giant created a perfect hollow just his size. In that empty heartbeat, he heard destiny hum. Not yet, it sang, but soon. Petir nodded to the silence as though to an accommodating host, then retreated down the corridor. When he reached his modest apartments, dawn's palest stripe gilded the horizon. He washed his hands in rosewater, trimmed the wick of a lamp, and opened the first of Belgrave's ledgers. Ink glimmered beneath dancing flame. Figures lined up like infantry on parade. He set quill to page. Each stroke carved a path, gold flowing here, silver damned there, debts purchased, loyalties transmuted. He was no soldier, yet in this quiet hour he marched armies none could see. When the quill paused, a faint chirrup sounded at his window. A sparrow flitted against the sill, message ribbon stitched to its leg. Simple, small. Beneath notice. Perfect. He unrolled the note. The Vale is thirsty, it read. Send rain. Petir smiled, dipped his quill and began to write the storm. Dawn burned pink across the city's sprawl. Market bells clamored. Gulls shrieked at fishing skiffs. Hoppers rang in beggar bowls. Gold, though silent, already flowed beneath it all like molten glass. And at its molten heart walked Littlefinger, purse-light, pockets full, eyes fixed on a throne that stabbed those who sat unwisely. He would sit carefully. He would sit cushioned by gilded promises. And when at last he claimed the chair, not a drop of blood need fall. Only the gentle clink of coin upon coin. the sweetest sound in all the 7 kingdoms. The chill before sunrise hovered over King's Landing like a held breath, and Petyr Baelish, sleepless, lantern lit, watched from his balcony as the harbor's first fires trembled awake. Bargemen in patched cloaks shuffled along the quays with poles over their shoulders. Longshoremen loosed curses at gulls bold enough to snatch crusts from their pockets. A red-sailed Myrish flute angled toward the mouth of the Blackwater, her hull low with contraband lace. Petyr studied every detail, counting the prophet lines that spiderwebbed between man and mast, dock and doorway. He noted which captains skimped on rope tar, which bribed inspectors, which paid their oarsmen in clipped coin. Each flaw in another's ledger offered room in his own. When he had learned all he could from mere observation, he turned inward to polish the more delicate gears of his machine. He began with a letter to Lysa Arryn. Will glided in measured arcs, spilling tenderness like vintage arbor gold that must be poured slowly, lest it foam away. He wrote of moonlit longings, of childhood games beneath the blooming apple tree at River Run, of the painful weight of absence that pressed on his breast. 2 lines later came mention, gentle, regretful, of her mounting debts, the nightly retinue grown fat on the Ares' generous larders, the dowry promised to a cross-eyed Gulltown cousin, the marble work on a sky-cell roof cracked by frost. He asked for nothing. He merely worried aloud, offering to send at personal sacrifice a few chests to ease your sweet mind. Then, almost as an afterthought, he suggested that the Vale's granaries were overfull and might fetch staggering prices in the Riverlands once typhoid rumors spread. A mother who loved her son, he implied, would surely wish his inheritance fattened by such prudent trade. Wax melted, seal pressed, the letter smelled of rosewater and long memory. Irresistible currents. He wrote next to a certain master of coin in Bravos, a lean-fingered woman who had taken to dressing as a man to better cow the guild patriarchs. They had no friendship, they had necessity. Petyr signed that note with cipher only, listing purchase orders for pig iron and tin to be routed through 3 dummy companies: Hedgehog Holdings, Dawnspire Craftworks, and the droll Harborlight Orphan Fund, before resurfacing in King's Landing as crown-minded half-dragon. The eyes of auditors, dazzled by charitable facades, would slide away without tallying the scheme's hidden toll of weight shaved from each coin. Over time, the realm would bleed precious metal into the counting house's Baelish control. The crown would blame minas, smiths' guilds, even distant Cohoric rites. Only Petyr would know the truth and pocket the difference. Quills cooled, dawn warm. He donned a doublet the color of dusk and pinned a mockingbird brooch at the throat. Amethyst for the eye, a sliver of jade for the wing. Polished boots whispered down the stair. By the time the servant's bell rang for first board, Littlefinger was already at the small council chamber, lean and immaculate, hooded lids disguising the sleepless gleam beneath. Grand Maester Picel arrived first, beard perfumed with orange blossom oil, strong enough to fumigate the rats from half the city. He blinked at Baelish in faint surprise. Varys glided through in peach silk a minute later, offering compliments like sugared almonds. Lord Tywin's chair remained empty, his duty in the Riverlands stretched on, so Cersei Lannister presided in his stead, today armored more by malice than silk. Conversation opened upon trade deficits. Petyr listened while the Queen Regent fumed at rising food prices and pirates in the Stepstones. When Pycelle's droning blame-casting wound down, Petyr leaned forward, voice wine-smooth. "A plague on the Stepstones, Your Grace, but one we might cure with a tincture of gold and selective starvation." He unfurled a parchment mapping convoy routes, adjusted so lantern light gilded the ink. "We raise port duties on all reach grain inbound to King's Landing by a trifling 2 pennies per cask. The Tyrells will howl, but they can afford howling. Simultaneously, we grant exclusive satire rights, Excuse me. Salvage rights to a fleet of Crown-sanctioned privateers operating out of the Blackwater mouth. They target only vessels carrying false Triarchy flags. He paused for effect, which, if rumor serves, many genuine pirate ships now adopt to escape stepstone levies. The tariffs appease our merchants. The letters of marque sat our coffers, and the Reach learns the cost of failing to send timely wheat these last seasons. Cersei's green eyes narrowed like shutters against bright sun. You propose we steal from our allies. He spread his hands. The Crown steals nothing. Pirates will pirate. We merely decide whose pockets the spoils eventually enrich. Pyzel cleared his throat, wheezing creakily, but Varys spoke first, silken curiosity masking razor-keen interest. And the privateers, Lord Baelish? Where might we find such bold captains in so short a season? Pettir's smile was a hidden blade, honed but sheathed. I've already compiled a list. Men of mixed birth, hungry for legitimacy. They'll swear the royal creed for half the cost of a sellsword host. Pycelle shuffled scrolls, muttering about dangerous precedents. Cersei drummed lacquered nails against the table. Her gaze weighed the scheme not on moral scale but on risk to her house. Ultimately, gold glittered brighter than caution. She nodded once. Begin vetting these captains. Results within a fortnight. Maybe. Pettir bowed. Varys intercepted his eyes with a knowing, feather-light glance before sinking into silence again. When the council dissolved, Baelish lingered only long enough to slide a folded slip beneath Pycelle's ledger stack. An untraceable promissory note for a new apothecary's grant in Old Town, payable once certain fiscal reports went missing from the Citadel's archives. Pycelle's trembling fingers found the bribe moments later. The old man's sigh was prayerful. Outside, summer's heat thrust skyward, rippling above slate roofs. Flea bottom steamed like an overfull stew pot. Night, Pettir's litter wound through rag-clogged market lanes until it halted at the pale stone facade of the Crown's Mint. Inside, the air rang with hammers and the sharp hiss of quenched steel dies. He greeted Master Engraver Mala with clipped familiarity, inspected racks of new half-dragons, weighed one in his palm, feigned admiration, then subtly flared nostrils. The alloy composition, slightly too brassy, betrayed a deficiency of gold few men would detect by scent alone. He pretended not to notice, but he marked the foreman whose apron bore flecks of unusual greenish residue, copper oxide from the smelting crucible. That foreman would receive an anonymous pouch tonight, 20 silver stags, hush money, to ensure the dilution continued at specific ratios. One counterfeit D could feed 100 small lies. 100 lies could finance a war. Beyond the Mint, Baelish dismissed the litter and walked. Sweat sheened his temple. Beggar's hands pawed at his cloak. He distributed coins precisely, a copper to a one-armed sell-sale, whose story might prove leverage one day, a silver half-stag to a little girl whose mother whispered secrets in brothels frequented by Tyrell squires, a golden dragon to a blind fiddler whose trilling ballads carried gossip up and down the street of Sisters. Each coin dropped was a seed. He would reap when the harvest turned ripe. At a wine sink called the Leaky Cup, he kept a low table in the back. There he met Nestor Longwater, tall and stoop-backed, hair like sea-salted rope. Once quartermaster aboard a Lysine slaver, now freed by royal pardon so shadowy few believed it existed. Pettir slid him a list of ship manifests bound for Pentos, vessels rumored to carry Tyrell bullion meant to finance grain purchases. For every chest lost at sea, Nestor's privateers would earn generous salvage rights minus a 15% facilitation fee payable to the Crown, remitted through Baelish's offices. Nestor counted the percentages in his thick skull, then grinned with a mouth half teeth, half gaps. They clasped wrists, a bargain forged. By noon, Peder ate figs in his counting house overlooking the iron gate. Clark scurried among towering ledgers, quills scratching like field mice. He walked the aisles, issuing soft corrections, double-checking sums, praising a young scribe's meticulous script. To each desk he added a sweet, a candied date, a perfumed token, a whispered pun. Fear bought obedience, but affection leased souls cheaper in the long run. One girl blushed crimson when he complimented her numeracy. Her uncle, he knew, served in the city watch, well placed to reroute patrols on night shipments when astray. Afternoon saw him in the shade of Baylor's Sept, where marble saints cast long, cool shadows. He knelt ostensibly in prayer, but his real worship transpired in whispered conversation with High Septon Orain behind a screen of tasseled purple cloth. Months of subtle tithes, new leaded glass for chapel windows, bolts of Myrish silk for the most devout, had ripened the man's gratitude into malleability. Peder cupped his words in sacramental hush. Donations to feed orphans afflicted by the spring flux, endowments for scribes to illuminate rare copies of the seven-pointed star. If only the faith might speak from pulpits about the sin of hoarding grain in times of want, particularly hoarding by lords of the earth-rich reach. The High Septon's piety blazed bright, but the firebanks of his vanity burned hotter. He agreed to draft an encyclical by week's end, praising royal generosity in the same breath that condemned Tyrell excess. They parted with clasped hands, two holy men exchanging blessings disguised as currents. Late daylight slanted amber over the rooftops when Littlefinger called upon the royal treasuries. Down narrow stairs he passed locked vaults where crowns of bygone kings gathered dust like neglected laurels. Within the deepest chamber stood iron banker Tyro Vaz, a hawk-eyed envoy lent from Bravos. To ensure timely interest, was a smile was thin as a drawn blade, his ledger thicker than a maester's oath book. Peder greeted him warmly, produced duplicate parchments of loan schedules, proposed refinancing terms that lowered monthly remittance, but extended liability across 3 generations, effectively chaining the throne until well after Tommen's reign. Was calculated behind flint-gray irises, found advantage for the Iron Bank, as steady as sunrise, and nodded. They shook hands. Peder's fingers brushed a ring on Vos's hand. Lapis set in bronze. Bravosi modesty hiding merchant prince wealth. The mockingbird brooch in response glittered avarice. Mutual recognition passed silent. We play the same game. Night fell purple. In the Red Keep's gallery of tapestries, Peder crossed paths with Sansa Stark, still called Elaine Stone in public, still cloaked in the half-truths he wove for her protection. She curtsied, auburn hair threaded with whisper vine blossoms. Those blossoms, he knew, cost 3 dragons a sprig in the market. He had paid gladly. The scent of them stirred river-child memories he rarely indulged. They spoke of innocuous things, new songs by the court bard, a rumor Sir Loras intended to challenge Sir Balon's swan to a friendly tilt, the frescoes being restored above the maiden vault. But beneath each gentle phrase he measured her poise, noted freckles newly silvered by sun, saw in her bearing a tentative steep. She was a chess piece, changing rank, a pawn near promotion. One day he would maneuver her to Queen's Square. Or so he believed. Yet when she mentioned an old northern ballad her mother once sang, the faint tremor in her voice pricked his confidence. He sent her to supper with a smile and waited long after until her footsteps faded. Hearts rarely featured in his ledgers, but occasionally an errant beat could disrupt the tally. From hidden corridors he descended to the dungeons, where flickering torches drew grotesque murals on damp stone. In a foul cell watched by 2 unsmiling gold cloaks, Jory Faring, scion of a minor Stormland's house, paced like a bear on hot iron. He was the Stormlander knight whose arbor red had stained Baelish's finger that morning, arrested for assaulting a wine factor who dared collect on gambling debts. Jory now faced ruin unless Coin rebalanced the scales of justice. Petir dismissed the guards, stepped into the cell, and produced not a purse, but a parchment absolution, signed in advance by the king's justice. Jory halted mid-stride, bewildered. Freedom lay in writing, yet Baelish tore the paper neatly in half before his eyes. Then, calmly he offered a quill and a fresh page. Confession, Jory sneered. A list of your creditors, Petir corrected. And the sums owed, accurate if you please. Also the names of certain Reach captains frequenting your dice circles, their routes, sailings, ports of call. Provide those, sir, and you'll leave this cell tonight with pockets heavy and reputation scrubbed shiny. Tone mild, but iron lurked beneath. Jory hesitated, pride dueling survival. Pride yielded in minutes. Ink scratched. Baelish accepted the sheet, folded it, pressed the original absolution, whole once more, for he had only mimed the tear. Into the night's calloused palm, and depart. Upstairs he paid the jailer's double hush fee, silver for silence, gold for lies delivered should any hand inquire. Moonrise painted the red keep's towers bone white. Petir retired not to bed but to his rooftop garden where lemon trees rustled in high breeze. He sipped chilled hippocras and tallied the day's harvest. A queen's nod, a pirate fleet, a hapless knight snared, a high septon's sermon, an iron banker's covenant. Threads wound tight through his grasp, each anchored to Coin, tug one, and distant bells would toll. Yet Coin alone could not purchase what still eluded him. A vacancy on the throne. For that he required Crisis. He closed his eyes, inhaling lemon blossom. Crisis could bloom from any seed. A famine sparked by grain shortages, a riot at the Sept incited by zealots, a naval defeat blamed on Lannister negligence. But chaos for its own sake, wasted capital. The Crisis must steer the realm to demand a steward of extraordinary finance, a savior of vaults. And once such stewardship rested in his custodial hands, formal coronation would feel a mere technicality. He set his cup aside. From a lacquered box he withdrew a slim glass vial of ink, distilled from cuttlefish and myrrh. It stained parchment midnight blue, impossible to remove. With it he composed 3 letters in cipher. The first, to Marguerite Tyrell, spoke of misappropriated Reach taxes, insinuating her grandmother's trusted factors were robbing the poor and endangering the house's saintly reputation. He enclosed falsified receipts. Outrage, he knew, would drive the young queen candidate to press her betrothed king, Tommen, for an investigation, one that would mire the Tyrells in defensive accounting. The second, addressed to Qyburn, detailed an anonymous donation of rare Esosai apothecary texts, volumes the disgraced maester craved, available to him once he secured exclusive rights to treat certain privy ailments rumored to plague Lord Giles Rosby, whose testament named the crown heir to vast wealth. Qyburn's compliance would assure Rosby received potent tonics that quietly shortened cough-racked nights. An inheritance might flow sooner than nature intended. The third letter flew to Balon Greyjoy's bastard son on the Shield Islands, offering 8,000 gold dragons for open raids along the Mandermouth, strictly targeting surplus grain barges. Should the Ironborn accept, the Reach would choke on scarcity by harvest's end. Desperate lords would implore royal relief more loudly than before. Wax cooled, seals hardened, ravens took wing. A gust jarred the garden lantern glass, scattering motes of light. Petir leaned against the parapet, studying the castle's bulk. Somewhere inside, Varys would read the air, suspect networks shifting. The spider whispered threads. But not all webs overlap. Littlefinger liked to weave in silk too fine for rival eyes. He withdrew to chambers just before dawn's false light, and finally allowed himself an hour's rest. When he woke, the realm had inched several thousand unseen steps along the path had traced. The next weeks unfolded like a strangler fig tightening round stone. The Ironborn, lured by Baelish gold, struck the cushioned belly of the Reach convoys. Tyrell, envoys stormed the court, crying for redress. Cersei feigned sympathy but insisted tariffs remain until investigations concluded. Privateer fleets under Nestor Longwater hoisted crown banners and plundered with legal zeal, replenishing coffers faster than Pycelle could count. Prices rose, tempers flared. Petyr managed each adjustment like a master smith quenching hot blades. He granted minor loans to distressed riverlords at interest mercifully low, winning their fealty. He sold grain reserves to Storm's End at a discount, buying Renly loyal vassals' silence. He loaned coin to the faith to expand soup kitchens, the High Septon preaching crown benevolence daily. Tommen, still a boy, delighted in tales of treasure reclaimed from pirates. Cersei preened, believing realm finances flourished beneath her oversight. Yet each ledger line curved back to Littlefinger. Then, elegantly timed, tragedy struck. Lord Giles Rosby died in his sleep, peacefully, Qyburn assured, and far sooner than Pycelle predicted. The crown inherited his entire fortune, warehouses of spices, fleets of freighters, hills of coin. But buried in Rosby's charters, Petyr uncovered decades of unpaid import duties, liabilities that now, per statute, transferred to the inheritor. The crown owed itself a staggering sum, an administrative absurdity, freezing the treasury in a knot of legal self-debt. Pycelle panicked. Cersei screamed. Gold cloaks demanded wages. Privateers demanded prize shares. The master of coin alone seemed calm. Baelish proposed a solution: issue royal bonds underwritten by the Iron Bank, collateralized against future port revenues, sold at modest discount to noble investors, thirsty for safe haven amid chaos. Interest modest, maturity distant. He personally volunteered to liaise with Braavos and manage distribution. The council, cornered by crisis, agreed. Letters patent named him Lord Regent of Fiscal Stabilization, a title cooked to impress bankers and fools alike. With authority signed and sealed, Petyr hosted a banquet in the small hall, all candlelight and harp music, to celebrate the throne's enduring solvency. Investors lined up like penitents. Half the realm's bullion slid into bonds by dawn. The treasury blossomed overnight, but now every major house held parchments payable only through Baelish's office. Their purse strings, once severed, now looped snug round his fingers. He moved to consolidate. Jory Faring's stolen manifests enabled privateers to intercept yet another Tyrell convoy, this one carrying silks for Margaery's autumn wardrobe. Humiliation cleaved alliance. The Reach threatened to withhold troops from the Crown's Stepstone campaign. Cersei snarled. Tyrell envoys haggled. Into that breach stepped Baelish with an offer. He would personally compensate Margaery for her lost gowns from his own modest fortune, if House Tyrell would fund the Crown's new urban granary initiative. Construction bids awarded to contractors he discreetly controlled. They agreed, saving face and enriching him further. Varys, ever watchful, confronted him late one evening in the Godswood, moonlight limning, the spider's bald crown silver. "Chaos is a ladder," Varys quoted softly, voice rustling leaves. "But ladders can be kicked away." Petyr smiled, thin as parchment. "Only if one's feet leave the rungs, my lord. Mine never do." Varys studied him, pity mixed with fear, then pivoted back into foliage. With spider eyes wary, Baelish accelerated. He slipped counterfeit tallies into the Night's Watch grain accounts, letting the realm believe frostbitten brothers risked famine. Sympathy soared. Lords donated wheat that Baelish redirected to city granaries, selling the surplus through dummy factors. Coin geysered. He used it to buy silent shares in the Crownlander garrison's supply train. Soldiers, fed and paid by funds traced to him, offered loyalty too. In the stepstones, crown-backed privateers, flying freshly painted banners, bearing a crowned mockingbird, ostensibly to honor the master of coin's efforts, won decisive skirmishes. Small folk cheered stories of bold captains reclaiming stolen wheat. Balladeers sang "LITTLEFINGER's" verse. The Queen Regent's jealousy sharpened, yet Baelish had already primed the next trap. During a small council session, he unveiled evidence, fabricated but irrefutable on its face, that the Tyrells had secretly purchased seats on the royal bond board via fronts in Mer, essentially leveraging crown debt to seize influence. Cersei erupted. War loomed. Shitty. To avert it, Baelish proposed a temporary stewardship of the Iron Throne's fiscal prerogative, separating treasury from crown politics. An emergency decree appointed him High Chancellor of Coin with unilateral authority to restructure bonds, freeze vaults, and reevaluate tariffs. The faith blessed the move as virtuous guardianship. Bravos applauded fiscal prudence. Lords bowed to necessity. Within a moon, the Iron Throne itself seemed an afterthought to the purse seat Petter occupied. Tommen signed whatever parchment Baelish placed before him. Cersei raged but could not unspool the threads. Even Tywin's return brought stalemate. The old lion found treasuries locked behind protocols requiring Brevosi co-signatures. Sack Baelish, lose the realm's credit. Bow to him. Keep armies fed. Tywin bowed, teeth grinding. Winter's first snow dusted the city when disaster visited again. This time unscripted. A fire erupted in the dragon pit granaries, sparked by lantern oil spilled in haste. Flames roared skyward, devouring wheat meant to feed 500,000. Riots ignited in Flea Bottom. Gold cloaks clashed with screaming crowds. Baelish had not lit that blaze, but he stoked it swiftly. He dispensed emergency bread from reserves he alone controlled, distributed by wagons stamped with his seal. Children cheered. Mothers wept blessings. He rode among them, cloak white with ash, face sincerest sorrow. Ingratitude. The mob cried his name louder than the king's. That night, in the throne room, Cersei demanded his arrest on charges of profiteering. Tywin counseled restraint. Varys vanished to gather whispers. Petyr knelt at the foot of the Iron Throne, humility personified, and tendered resignations from every office if any could prove his treachery. None could. Instead, Tywin proposed, grudgingly, that Baelish be granted a new title, Lord Protector of the Realm's Purse, answerable only to the throne, empowered to ensure no future shortages imperil king or commons. Elevation is punishment. Yet even this apex remained a step below his ambition. Thrones chained men to rulership. He preferred the chains around others' throats. Still, power abhorred vacancy. He dreamt broader. He dispatched a raven to Lysa, remind her of their plan to wed quickly at last, then bring Robin Arryn to court where proper accountants might manage the Vale's coffers. Marriage to the Lady Regent would vault him into princely rank, place an army of stone-hearted mountain clans at his beck, and seat him near enough the throne to overhear its every creak. But on wings behind that raven flew crisis unforeseen. Lysa, unstable, wrote back refusing court, accusing Petyr of neglect, of duplicity, of harboring that Stark girl in plain sight. She threatened to reveal his manipulations unless he returned to the Eyrie at once. Her hysteria jeopardized years of craft. Abandoning his position even briefly risked Tywin's counterstroke. Yet if Lysa shrieked truth into the wind, the entire scaffold might topple. He paced the solar all night, wine untouched. By dawn, decision hardened. He would go to the Vale, hush Lysa by kiss or knife, and return unassailable. But the journey must draw no suspicion. He convened the council at midday, proposing a tour of inspection across the realm's granaries to restore public confidence after the fire. Cersei scoffed. Tywin's eyes narrowed, but none offered alternative balm for restless streets. Thus chartered, Baelish departed with royal blessing, first to Gulltown to ensure maritime gates for grain remain secure, then overland to inspect cold cellars of the Eyrie. Sansa, disguised again as Elaine, accompanied him as cup-bearer and ledger clerk. They sailed aboard the Merling's Vale, a swift cog trimmed in green and white to honor the crown. Sea spray glittered like coin dust on deck rails. In the chart room, Petyr trained Sansa nightly in figures. Stocks of barley, cost of iron nails, interest tables, until her pen flew as keen as any man's. She learned quickly, eyes bright with purpose beyond songs of knights. He felt a thrill teaching her, shaping not only a tool but perhaps a partner. Somewhere in the gull cries echoed the ghost of a boy dueling for a maiden's kiss beside Riverrun's brook. He silenced it with calculation, but it lingered. At Gulltown, he praised the harbor master's diligence, then hinted at ledger irregularities. By dusk, the master had volunteered double tariffs and a discreet endowment to the crown, both funneled through Baelish's accounts. Up the Giant's Lance road they climbed, winter wind knifing cloaks. Mountain clans shadowed them, but Petyr's riders carried pouches of silver. They reached the Eyrie under swirling snow. Lysa greeted them in the high hall, cheeks blotched rose beneath feverish eyes. Tears blurred her smile. She clasped Petyr's hands, then raved about poisoners, plots, the mockingbird's long silences. As Robin's wings fluttered overhead, she demanded immediate wedding at moonrise, as if rings might calm the pounding in her skull. Petyr murmured compliance, but dread uncurled. In that moment, he saw throne's downfall in the whites of her eyes. Night turned the castle blue. Littlefinger wed Lady Arryn beneath flickering torches, voices echoing in icy corridors. Sansa held the bridal cloak, expression marble still. When vows sealed, Lysa dragged Baelish to the moon door, intention unreadable. She spoke of secrets, Jon Arryn's death, Stark girl hostage, Catelyn's memory stabbing her heart. Envy twisted her mouth. She clutched Petyr's face, begged confession of love greater than that owed any other woman. He whispered sweet poison, the same he'd used on countless marks, but beneath. Fatigue ripe, each lie cost more breath. Sansa emerged from shadows, pleading for peace. Lysa shrieked betrayal. Fingertips whitened on Petyr's doublet. Snow spun wild beyond the open sky throat of the moon door. Choice balanced like a coin's edge, one side ruin, one side rule. He kissed Lysa's tears, promised devotion eternal, then gently eased her backward. Gravity's law signed the warrant. She plummeted, scream fading to silence more complete than bond yields or royal decrees. Stillness. Sansa's hands trembled. Petyr's heart drummed emptily. He wrapped an arm around the girl, guided her away, rehearsing explanations before even drawing breath. Suicide born of grief, of sorrow, of fragile humors. Witnesses would corroborate. Maester Quills would ink the verdict. He would inherit lordship, secure the Vale, return to King's Landing garlanded in widower's dignity. Yet as he spoke to Sansa in hushed tones, telling her what must be said at inquest, he felt a fissure widen in his ledger. The girl's blue eyes, once malleable, studied him now with chill intellect he himself had sharpened. She nodded, yes, but something unseen tallied inside her. For the first time, he wondered whether his greatest investment might grow into creditor. The inquest passed swiftly. Lords declarant grumbled but lacked proof. Robin Arryn's pliant signature under Petyr's regency sealed matters. Letters rode ahead proclaiming the realm's finances soon to bloom under the united banners of crown and vale. Petyr descended the mountain road, new armies at his back, new gold in his wagons. Snow melted to mud, mud dried to dust. By the time he glimpsed the Red Keep's crimson spires again, word had spread of fresh riots, of Cersei's failing grip, of Tywin's sudden collapse from a mysterious gut ailment after supper. An event Baelish had not engineered yet gladly exploited. He dismounted before the gates, cloaked dusty, boots road-stained, but eyes ablaze. City watch captains saluted. Small folk cheered. In the throne room, Tommen clambered down jet-black steps to hug the man who had fed his people. The Iron Throne loomed behind, blades thirsty. Yet for the first time Petyr felt its hunger not as threat but invitation. Blades cut, but coin bought the healers. He knelt, head bowed, while heralds trumpeted his return. Voices clamored for titles, for offices, for regencies. Cersei tried to object, her words drowned beneath acclamation. Lords proposed that until the king came of age, finance and policy both rest in Lord Baelish's hands, he who had proven stewardship unmatched. The great hall rang with assent. Tommen nodded happily, trusting. The throne's sharp shadow fell across Petyr's shoulders like a mantle of daggers. He rose slowly, eyes lifted to blades fused by conquest and fire, design by dragons, destiny by gold. In that forged jungle he saw, at last, the seat he had never needed to sit, because by then every sword's sharpest edge pointed inward to purse strings he alone commanded. He smiled, subtle as dawn on Banker's Rose, and turned to address his kingdom. Behind his ribs, a single coin spun, unseen, forever flipping through light and shadow, until heads and tails ceased to matter, and only the glint itself remained. Yundali, Ndadas. A raw, salt-tanged wind whipped across the battlements of the Red Keep, tugging at banners newly emblazoned with the crowned stag of Tommen Baratheon, and, more subtly, the faceted mockingbird of his Lord Protector. Torchlight made the silk shimmer, but in the courts below, the city writhed with darker colors, smoke black, riot red, hunger gray. Gold still flowed, yet gold's guilt could not forever mask the stink of simmering want. Petyr Baelish knew this as he paced the high wall walk, slippered feet soundless against frost-slick stone. Dawn's paling horizon painted the black water a sheet of hammered lead. Beneath it, gulls shrieked like whetstones on steel. He paused at the southwest tower where a slender girl waited, hood drawn low. Sansa, Elaine by pretense, offered a steaming cup of leek broth, and he accepted, savoring the sting of heat. Her gloved hands trembled only slightly, though her eyes betrayed unease. Wordless minutes slid past. Then she asked, voice fragile as candle wisp, whether the winter ships from White Harbor might soon arrive with relief grain. Petyr answered, truth wrapped in velvet. One convoy had sailed, yes, but ice pack in the bight slowed progress. Sailors feared krakens. The Mandermouth raiders had driven up insurance costs. He listed each obstacle like beads on prayer string, as though fate, not finance, hindered rescue. She listened, lips tightening upon a grief she would not speak. Finally, she turned away, cloak whipping, and descended toward the keep's inner stairs. He watched her vanish. The girl learned quickly, but her heart remained too warm, liable to scorch the delicate frost he laid over conscience. He would have to temper that heat before it melted his designs. The small council that morning crackled with static expectation. Tywin's throne-like chair sat draped in black, unoccupied since the lion's sudden death. Cersei held still at its right, chin lifted in a defiant angle that could not quite mask hollowed cheeks. Pycelle wheezed over stacked parchments. Kevan Lannister loomed dour, Sir Meryn's helmet bobbed behind. Only Varys smiled, delicate fingers laced, bald head bowed in mock humility. Beside them all, Petier took the steward's seat. Plain oak, no carved lions, no dragons, but every clerk in the gallery noticed which chair papers traveled toward. Cersei spoke first. Anger poured to brittle glass. The Stormlands refuse our levy, claiming inability to feed their own. The Ironborn raid the coasts with impunity, and the Tyrells threaten to embargo wine. Meanwhile, our granaries burn, our coffers deplete, and my son's people blame the crown. She turned, emerald eyes knifing. You are the realm's purse, Lord Baelish. Explain why gold no longer buys obedience. He inclined his head, a teacher correcting an inquisitive child. Gold buys what men value, your grace. Hunger lowers value, fear raises it. When a purse must feed a mouth and shield a throat, coin alone thins. The remedy is not more gold, but more fear of living without the crown's favor. Kevin shifted. And if fear drives them to rebellion, only rebellion with allies can last. Petier replied. We must make alliance costly and rebellion lonely. He produced parchment. A modest proposal: declare a royal mortgage respite. Suspend debts owed by small folk to noble landlords who maintain crown bond holdings. The commons earn immediate relief. The lords perceive profit. Those without bonds envy, purchase, bind themselves. Within a season, every house will cling to crown paper like a drowning man to driftwood. Then we tighten the terms. Pycelle's mouth opened, but Petier continued. Simultaneously, we commission new coin. The Phoenix Dragon, minted with trace amounts of dragon glass from Dragonstone's veins. Play upon superstition, shards said to slay White Walkers. People will hoard such coins as charms. Hoarded coins leave circulation, easing inflation while the treasury profits on seigneurage. He laid down sketches, a coin bearing Tommen's childish profile on one face, a rising phoenix on the other. The phoenix eye, a minute chip of obsidian, glowed faintly in torchlight. Varys' brows lofted. Ingenious, a currency and a talisman in one. Cersei folded arms. And the cost? Minimal. Dragonstone's shore is littered with broken glass. Men will gather it for copper wage. Perception is dear. Reality is cheap. Nyan, Nisisi. Arguments fluttered, but hunger gnawed louder. The council adopted both measures. Petier left the chamber trailing scribes like ducklings, his ledger already adjusting yields on obsidian shipments he'd quietly purchased weeks prior. The mint's furnaces roared night and day, belching soot that smeared the sky. Coins clattered down chutes into cedar crates, each crate banded with wax seals bearing the mockingbird's sigil. In Flea Bottom, preachers hired by Petier extolled the Phoenix Dragon's virtues. Carry one, and the chill of the others cannot touch you. Penny amulets changed hands for silver stags. Within a fortnight, Phoenix Dragons vanished from stalls into mattresses. Cellars, sewn linings of cloaks. Circulation throttled. Prices eased. Panic cooled. Yet smoke of other kind drifted through the city. Leaflets penned in coarse ink depicting Littlefinger as a two-headed serpent strangling a golden stag. The hand that penned them bore cunning, for the text cited real grievances: tariffs, pawnshops foreclosing, city gates tolls. Petier traced distribution to a disgruntled scribe formerly employed in the Master of Ship's office, now vanished. Varys approached for whispers, tilted his head like an owl, and professed ignorance eyes wide, innocence too smooth. Petier paid sellswords to scour print dens, but the serpent pamphlets multiplied, feeding gutters like autumn leaves. He responded indirectly, finance pageants honoring the crown's faithful servants. Floats of wheat sheaves paraded streets. Mummers reenacted heroic breadlines. Children received sugared almonds tossed from wagons painted with the phoenix coin. The city cheered, paper serpents forgotten under drifts of sweet shell shards. A lesson: noise drowns whisper. But in the Red Keep's higher corridors, whispers sharpened. Cersei confided in her uncle that Baelish eyed not merely coin but crown. Kevin believed half, feared whole. He solicited Pycelle, who found irregularities. Purchase orders bearing cryptic signatures, grain weights lighter than ledgers claim. They confronted Petter with a sheaf of parchment. He smiled, pointed to his accounting staff. Errors unintentional. When clerks recalculated the numbers balanced to the copper, Pycelle's eyes clouded. Somehow, in the recount, entire columns had realigned. Kevin smelled sorcery. Pettier fanned the suspicion, suggested a court inquest, volunteers auditors from the faith. Faced with such transparent confidence, Kevin hesitated. The matter dissolved. In the Vale, disquiet deepened. Bronze, Jan Royce, and Lady Waynwood petitioned to relieve Baelish of regency. The High Steward of Runestone alleged mismanagement of Lord Robin's health, citing quack remedies of leech bile and sweet milk that left the boy weak. Pettier dispatched messages sealed with the king's wardship, summoning the Vale Lords to King's Landing for arbitration. Traveling through winter mountain passes would delay them months. Meanwhile, he sent Maester Coleman rare tonics, said to soothe the shaking sickness afflicting the young lord. The vials, actually mild opiates, lulled Robin to placid haze. Letters home described the boys, improving composure, undercutting dissent. He nurtured other alliances. Lady Olenna, skeptical of coin trickery but fond of witty sparring, received a hamper of arbor vintage so rare she could not recall planting. Inside a note, even gold tastes thin beside memory of summer fruit. She laughed, drank, and conceded temporary truce. In Sunspear, Prince Doran gained rights to import sunrise peppers tariff-free. Small cost for Baelish, enormous prestige for Doran. The prince's silence on maritime raids followed. Yet each pact frayed other threads. Cersei's jealousy fermented to rancor. She courted Qyburn's arts, whispering of poisons that left no mark. Varys observed, filing secrets like daggers on a shelf. Sansa, eyes newly keen, walked the castle like a ghost of parted lace, smiling, listening, remembering. One storm-scoured evening, she found Pettier in his solar quill dancing across vellum. She asked, gentle, "Why do you never rest?" He answered, "Sleep is coin spent. When the realm slumbers, I bargain with morning." Moonin. She watched candlelight sculpt his face into shadows. "And when morning bargains with you?" "Eh?" He paused. "Then, my dear, I shall be too rich to notice." Her gaze held snow's stillness. "Rich men freeze faster when winter comes." He laughed softly. "A sword can crack frozen gold to kindle fire, but only if the wielder knows the strike." He beckoned. "Sit. I wish to show you a puzzle." She came. On the desk lay a lattice of wooden tokens inscribed with sigils. He rearranged pieces, illustrating shifting debts, holdings, allegiances. She followed, grasping leaps of logic twice removed. "Each move," he said, "conceals itself within two honest reasons and one apparent contradiction. The trick is ensuring witnesses focus on the honesty." She studied the board. "What if they see the contradiction first? Then you create a second contradiction brighter and feed them toward it." She nudged a token bearing a direwolf. "And if they refuse to play?" He laid his hand over hers, warm, confiding. "Everyone plays, little dove, even those who think they watch." Her skin chilled. She excused herself, leaving tokens unset. After she left, Pettier traced the direwolf piece, frowning. She was acquiring angles. Winter's heart clenched. Frost-hard ground cracked beneath wagon wheels. Food lines lengthened again. Phoenix dragons hoarded too deep for commerce. Pettier anticipated this. He unveiled bread chits redeemable only at crown granaries. printed on vellum scented faintly with lavender to foil counterfeit. Chits purchased with Phoenix Dragons, re-released hoarded coins. Trade stirred, but riots flared outside the city where chits held no sway. Bandits, wearing scraps of Tyrell green, attacked convoys. Whether genuine or false flag, the effect drove wedge deeper. Pedir convened commanders, Marin Trant for the Red Keep, Jalapark Show for Crown Archer units, and 3 new sellsword captains sworn to him by purse. He laid routes, scheduled decoys, ensured convoy guards carried bond vouchers redeemable only upon successful return. Money wedded to survival. The worst attack struck near Bitterbridge, where a convoy hauling crown silver met a host of armored riders bearing laughing flourishes on emerald cloaks. They overran guards, slew mules, seized chests, only to find inside sacks of painted stones. Real silver had departed 2 days earlier by river barge disguised as sewage scow. Rage kindled, rumors pinned blame on Reach lords. Tyrell envoys arrived crimson-faced, swearing innocence. Baelish consoled them, then raised tariffs on Tyrell wool to deter infiltration. Behind closed doors, he sold futures on those tariffs to Bravosi brokers, pocketing windfall when rates spiked. In the Queen's chambers, meanwhile, Qburn dripped honeyed lies into Cersei's ear. Poison slow as regret, undetectable in beer or soup, that left victims raving of phantom birds before collapse. She imagined Littlefinger clawing air, Mockingbird undone by mockingbirds. Yet each time she steeled nerve, Tommen burst in with kitten or wooden knight, and the vial remained stopper. Her frustration sought other vent. She summoned Sir Osman Kettleblack, offered coin and promises of lordship if he could find proof, any proof, of Baelish plotting treason. Kettleblack enlisted cut purses to tail the mockingbird at night. They returned with stories of innocuous visits, counting house audits, scripture readings with the High Septon, garden strolls. Proof eluded. Sir Osman faked letters implicating Baelish with Mirish mercenaries. But as they reached Cersei's table, fairies anonymously delivered copies of the same letters, stamped with Kettleblack's seal. Humiliated, she flogged the knight publicly and turned blame on the eunuch. Varys melted away, unscathed. Pedir watched from balcony, lips curled, yet he knew the spider tightened silk unseen. Indeed, one dawn he woke to find his private lockbox cracked, a single parchment removed, a cipher detailing payments to Ironborn raiders. Varys now possessed the rope for strangling. The eunuch played long, but he played. Pedir filed contingency. That contingency grew root in Old Town, where the citadel hummed with scholarship and quiet intrigue. A bright young acolyte, Orland the Quill, specialized in codes. Pedir had earlier funded Orland's sister's dowry. Now he called favor. False ciphers planted amid ledgers implicating Varys in fomenting rioters, smuggling warlocks from Korth, even plotting to seat Aegon Targaryen on the throne. The parchments traveled by Raven to King's Landing addressed to Archmaester Peristan, who conveniently had died the day before arrival, leaving his understudy, also on Baelish's purse, to forward the package, sealed but accidentally torn into Pycelle's fumbling hands. Within, Pycelle found damning codes identical in hand to the one stolen from Pedir's lockbox. Accusations erupted. Varys countered with calm denial, but evidence multiplied. Cersei, hunger for scapegoat sharpened, ordered the eunuch confined pending inquiry. The spider vanished that night, leaving only slippers and a faint lavender trace of Night Queen perfume. Pedir watched empty quarters and exhaled thin relief. One danger fled, one wary dove still cooed. The Lords of the Vale finally reached King's, landing beneath banners, ragged from sleet. They convened in Maegor's holdfast, demanding review of regency. Pedir hosted a feast first, steaming venison, blueberry wine, harpists playing mountain lays. Robin Arryn, pale and wide-eyed, clung to his guardian's sleeve, fragile as porcelain. Pettier toasted bronze Yon's courage, Lady Wainwood's wisdom, Sir Simon's chivalry. Gifts followed supper, new silver axes for Roycemen, dulcet hawks for Wainwood's muse, land patents in Crownland's marshes for every signatory. By dawn, half the delegation murmured of Baelish as worthy stepfather. The other half he threatened subtly. Reveal Liza's letter implicating each in vague treasons should they press. The formal review collapsed under cordiality and fear. Regency confirmed. Sansa watched from the gallery, expression unreadable. That night she approached Pettier amid topiary griffins. Moonlight silvered her hair. Breath misted. She said soft, "Why kill only those who threaten? You kill those who trust you too." He started, surprised. "What makes you think?" "I heard Maester Coleman speak. The milk you send Robin is poppy thick. It keeps him docile but leeches strength. You rot him." Pettier shook head. "The treatments soothe pain. He was not sick until you became his healer." An icy silence. Then he smiled gently. "All rulers take medicine, sweetly. Some is bitter, some sweet. One day you'll dose a kingdom. You'll understand necessity. Learn to. Her eyes glimmered. "Will you dose me too when I cease being useful?" He stepped closer, touched her cheek. "I intend to make you indispensable." She held his gaze, neither flinching nor yielding, until footsteps echoed and she withdrew. Snow-layered rooftops, Baelish's phoenix dragons, buried beneath hearths, radiated chill stories of necromancy. Superstitious folk blamed them for winter's bite. Coin of Dread risked revolt. Peer pivoted, announced recall program, exchanged talisman coins for warm wool cloaks at cost subsidized by crown. People queued, surrendered hoarded gold for cloth, priced thrice to produce, yet thanked the crown for charity. Mint smelted coins, purity restored, profit gleaned again. But clamor in secret corners grew louder. A new pamphlet appeared, depicting a phoenix coin melting to reveal a skull. Anonymous assemblies whispered of fire priests, preaching servants' revolution. Pettier's agents traced route to the black cells, Septim all, imprisoned for heresy, minted curses in captivity. Coin smuggled her scribblings to street. Rather than silence, Pettier ordered her released in spectacle, pardoned by Tommen, escorted to Sept Choir where she publicly praised the crown's mercy. Her zealots scattered, faith confusion, bleeding momentum. One misstep came in the form of iron. The fleet heeled back to Harry Stepstones, sailed north for Reaver's ambition, ignoring letters of marque. They seized Lannisport wine galleons, provoking Kevin's wrath. The Lord Regent demanded restitution. Pettier promised investigation, dispatched envoys carrying sealed payments, contracts binding captains under pain of forfeiture. Yet, the episode chilled alliance. Kevin, distrustful, aligned with Lady Olenna to push Regency Council limiting Baelish's unilateral authority. Pettier sought counterweight, invited northern clans, led by Lyanna Mormont's envoy, to court, promising funds to rebuild Winterfell once Bolton usurpers ousted. Their arrival stirred stark sympathies across realm. Sansa, unveiled at feast as Lord Protector's ward of honor, drew gasps. Her beauty had aged from petal to flame. Whispers soared. Kevin saw threat. A Stark restored would win small folk. He pressed Tommen to reclaim the North through royal writ, appointing Manderly as warden. Pettier evidently delayed action, citing the need for integrated fiscal assessment. Delay, his favorite currency. Yet behind delays, storms staged. Cersei's patience sundered. She conspired with Qyburn to craft songbird dust, powder that dissolved in wine. left victims singing nonsense until lungs failed. She planned to slip it in Peter's hippocras during grand winter feast. Sansa overheard Kettleblack boasting of the vial's delivery. That night, she visited Peter's chambers. Eyes wet, confession trembling. Poison, Queen's order, feast imminent. He believed her, partly because she wept, partly because he'd already suspected. He thanked her, pressed gentle kiss to brow, assuring safety. Feast night arrived. Hall blazed with scented torches. Acrobats juggled flaming brands. Petyr raised cup when Queen toasted realm. He drank deeply, only water. A decanter of hippocras passed to Cersei, her nerves taut. She sipped. Nothing occurred. Yet an hour later, Grand Master Pycelle, who had poured from same bottle earlier, staggered to dais, babbling canticles before collapsing. Mayhem erupted. Wyvern knelt, feigned aid, declared stroke. Cersei paled, heart hammering. She could not own the vial. Petyr hushed crowd, ordered hall cleared, quietly ensured Pycelle's body, spirited to Sept without autopsy. Next day ravens cried, Grand Maester dead of winter chill. Cersei's terror became leash. From then, she dared not speak against the mockingbird. But victory birthed overreach. Petyr convened an extraordinary council, excluding Kevan, proposing Tommen betrothed to Alayne Stone, legitimized as Sansa Stark, toe by North and Crown. Cersei objected, but found herself cornered. Refusing risked branding her enemy to the north, accepting ceded influence to Baelish. Kevan, summoned late, stormed in furious, declaring regent's authority exceeded. Petyr countered he acted under royal prerogative to secure realm. Voices rose, Tommen blinked tears. Sansa stood silent, face drained. At crescendo, a herald burst. News from Riverrun. Brynden Blackfish had recaptured castle with northern allies. Lannister garrison surrendered. Wave of rebellion surged. Baelish read opportunity. Declare amnesty, invite Blackfish to negotiate. Kevan insisted on war. The council fractured. In the rift, Petyr glimpsed his route. Present himself as sole peacemaker capable of bridging divides. He rode for Riverrun within a day, Sansa beside, sworn swords behind. Road travel wove through warscar fields, thawing under false spring. Villages burned months, prior sprouted weeds through charred floorboards. Small folk lined ditches, pleading for copper. Petyr tossed coins sparingly, promising aid. Sansa sometimes overruled, ordering whole cartloads of barley distributed. He chastised waste. She answered, barley rots in bins. Let gratitude ferment instead. He reluctantly applauded. At Maidenpool they found Varys, cloaked, thin, eyes sad. He emerged from Mummer's troop, blocking path with empty palms. Petyr's guards drew steel, but Varys merely bowed. My lord, I come bearing truths wrapped in sorrow. Baelish sneered. Truth sells cheap from a eunuch in exile. Cheaper still from a knave upon a throne, Varys replied. He produced scrolls, wax intact with mockingbird sigil, copies of payment orders to Ironborn, forged ciphers, phoenix dragon ledgers. In Riverrun wait ravens ready to fly. Release me, and I release silence. Petyr weighed options. Killing the spider here invited stories, sparing reignited threat. Sansa spoke, voice brittle, let him go. Shadows flee deeper if chased. Baelish nodded curtly. Varys vanished into crowd. Trust fractured further between Ward and Guardian. Riverrun's banners rippled red trout on Sunset River. Blackfish greeted Sansa warmly, studied Baelish coldly. Negotiations unfolded beneath weirwood rafters. Petyr offered pardon, seats on small council. Relief grain, phoenix coin scholarship for Riverland orphans. Blackfish demanded withdrawal of every Lannister levy, return of Edmure's child taken hostage, and full autonomy and taxation. Stalemate brewed. Sansa interjected, propose marriage, not to Tommen but herself, Lady of Winterfell to Riverrun's future lord, uniting Stark and Tully blood, restoring both houses. Baelish froze. Blackfish's eyes glinted. He deferred answer, yet the hall buzzed. That night, Petter confronted Sansa. Why undercut our plan? She replied calm. Our plan, you wed me to Boy King to chain me. I choose my chain. Rage flickered, quickly banked. I forged your path from ashes. You forged shackles in gold. He stepped forward, saw in her pupils shards of moon through shutters. Decided cajolery. Any match you desire, I can craft, when time suits. She smiled thin. Time suits now. Over days, Riverrun thrummed with rumor. Vale Knights, loyal more to Sansa's quiet grace than Baelish's coin, discussed deposition. Petyr sensed tide shifting. He redoubled courtship, gifts of ivory combs, silken downs, promises whispered. She accepted, but eyes distant, as if counting exits. One crisp dawn, horns blared. Scouts announced host approaching. Lord Kevin, with 10,000 Lannister spears, wore banners aflutter, siege lines drawn. Riverland lords panicked. Baelish saw opportunity, present himself mediator again. He rode to parley tent between armies, Sansa seated behind, Robin Arryn's banner flanking. Kevin advanced under crimson, gaunt but resolute. Talks spewed heat. Kevin accused Baelish of treason, abetting rebels. Baelish accused Lions of War profiteering. Sansa listened, then spoke. All speak of treason, none of children starving. She proposed each side withdraw 1 league, hold feast for peasantry between, swear truce for 3 days. Lannister captains laughed. Baelish dismissed as naive. Yet Blackfish's weary eyes softened. Kevin, remembering ashes of war, considered. Stalemate cracked. They agreed, for optics if nothing else. Feast day dawned. Peasants flooded cleared meadow, tables laden, songs rising. Baelish supervised coin counting. Each loaf cost ledger. Sansa danced with orphan girl, hair loose. Kevin watched, expression conflicted. In that fragile peace, an assassin struck. Blade gleamed under midday. Target, Petyr Baelish. The killer, disguised as Baker, lunged. Sansa screamed. Baelish ducked, steel grazed cheek. Gods felled man. Under torn tunic appeared Lannister crimson. Chaos surged. Peace teetered. Baelish pressed cloth to wound, eyes blazing triumph. Proof of lion perfidy. But Kevin bellowed innocence. Blackfish stepped between armies, sword raised flat, demanding parley. Sansa knelt by Petyr, eyes wide with fear. Fear that flickered suspicion. Later, in sick room, Master stitched Baelish's face. He told Sansa, voice hoarse, that Kevin's treachery would break truce. She touched bandage, asked, "Did you hire him?" Lightning crackled in silence. He laughed soft, pain-laced. To stab my own face. She held gaze. You stage wounds elsewhere. His smile faded. Trust is choice, my sweet. Choose. Tears pooled, but she chose silence. Night snow muffled camp. Flames flickered blue. Varys returned as shadow to Sansa's tent. He offered parchment, proof the assassin served Baelish years prior as cut purse, now dead by unknown hire. He asked her to read aloud. She did, trembling. He then gave ruby seal, Tully fish entwined with stark wolf, a marriage contract drafted by northern lords, lacking only signatures. A path, he whispered. Out of the mockingbird's cage. Sansa stood before Blackfish, and Kevin bearing contract. She declared intent to wed a Riverlord of Blackfish's choosing. Pledge North and Vale to peace, under independent rule, if Lannister host. Withdrew south and Crown recognized new protectorate. Kevin balked. Then spies delivered news. King's Landing erupted in bread riots again. Cersei besieged in Maegor's Holdfast. Tommen hostage to gold cloaks loyal to dead vouchers. Kevin's fight drained. He agreed truce, marched home to rescue family and throne. News of riot cut Baelish deeper. The city he wove unraveled without his hand. He rallied a cadre, Vale Knights, Sellswords, and galloped south, bleeding from freshly reopened stitches. Sansa watched his standard fade across horizon, heart hammering against ribcage, both free and frightened. King's Landing smoldered, smoke pillars twisting like augurs into blank snow sky. Phoenix dragons clinked underfoot where looters smashed jars. Gold cloaks, unpaid, deserted gates. Bread rustled only in dreams. In Red Keep's throne room, Tommen sobbed beside dented crown. Cersei screamed orders no one obeyed. Hybern's silent sisters patrolled corridors. White masks splattered red. Pettier arrived at dusk, trousers mud-spattered, eyes fever-bright. He strode through deserters, flung open oaken doors. Seeing mother and son huddled under Blade's sun throne, he felt surge of old awe and cold calculation. He knelt before King, pressed blood-flecked cloak to marble. Your grace, I bring relief, grain, and loyal men. Command me. Cersei staggered forward, spit curses, but Tommen reached first, clutching Baelish's hand. Help us, he pleaded. Pettier rose, surveyed Hall. Gold cloaks flanked pillars, wary but hungry for command. He spoke crisp, unhurried. Open granaries, issue bread chits redeemable by noon. Anybody hindered is traitor. Captain Simon, take men, secure port, seize every ship grain hold. Lord Giles, vault unlock, pay arrears. Commands flowed. Soldiers moved, lured by clarity. Cersei hissed behind, you usurp my rule. He faced her, bowed shallow. I salvage it. She raised hand to strike. He caught wrist, lowered gently. Queen of Ashes is no queen. Let me douse fire. She collapsed to throne step, tears mixing pain. Within hours, bread lines formed. Phoenix dragons exchanged for steaming loaves. Fires quenched by city wells, bribed with wine. Crowds chanted again, Littlefinger feeds. Yet flicker of fear shadowed Pettier's mind. Every riot a crack, fissuring foundation. Night fell. He stood alone before Iron Throne. Its shadow gnarled across floor like iron forest. He touched a blade, finger bleeding instantly. Coin buys many things, but not forgiveness of steel. He wrapped cut, stepped back. On dais he arranged parchments. New decrees centralizing treasury under Office of Realm Recovery. He would chair. Then Sansa entered, cloaked in frost. Vale Knights behind. Her eyes shimmered with something beyond fear. She knelt to Tommen, kissed his cheek, murmured comfort. Baelish watched, heart beat tight. She rose, faced him, voice carrying across hall. My lord requests audience before small council. He gestured assent. Council gathered in torchlit gloom. Kevin arrived weary. Olenna guarded, Doran by Raven proxy. Jan Royce standing sentinel. Sansa produced Varys scrolls, Royce testimonies, Orland ciphers, linking Baelish to Ironborn raids, Stepstone profiteering, Phoenix scarcity, assassin plot. She spoke slow, steady, each syllable a hammer. Pettier's face remained masked, but inside gears jarred. When she finished, Hall echoed heartbeat. He stepped forward, hands open. Forged all. Young lady misled by eunuch and discontents. Kevin raised trembling parchment, bearing Baelish's original signature seal from years prior. One Pettier assumed burn. Burn the blacksmith, recovered melted wax from coin crate, resurrected imprint, proof bled. Tommen tugged mother's sleeve, eyes wide. Cersei whispered yet gave no order. Too many times betrayal bruised her. Kevin signaled guards. Gold cloaks advanced, uncertain, half at pockets lined by mockingbird, half by lions. Tension strummed. Sansa moved to Pedder's side, whispered, "Do not fight." For heartbeat, he saw childhood creak, Catelyn's laughter, dream of red-haired girl queen. Then he spun, snatched dagger from guard, pressed to Sansa's throat. Gasps. He spoke calm. "I built kingdom of coin while you played swords. You cannot rend with steel what gold has fused." She trembled yet met his gaze. "Gold melts under dragon fire." "Dragons are dead," he said. "Not all." Hush rippled as outside. Sky roared. Distant across Blackwater, a beat like thunder struck. Shadow wings, huge, blacker than night, swept over moon. Drogon, rider unseen, soared above Red Keep in silent arc. Fear pumped crowd. Baelish's eyes reflected flame as beast exhaled column of golden fire into bay, boiling water. Coin minted from phoenix molds, glowed molten in vault glimpses beneath. He faltered. In that flicker Sansa twisted, daggers sliding from clutch. Guards surged. Blade tips met throat, his now. He stared at her, astonishment shading sorrow. She whispered, "I choose my chain." He breathed her scent, cedar and snow. A new ledger finally balanced. They bound him in golden cuffs, mockery perfect. Coins once his power, now weight of doom. Outside, cheers met dragonfire, lighting harbor. Within hall, Tommen's voice shook as he ordered Lord Baelish confined pending trial for treason. Petyr walked between spear points, steps measured, head high. Ledger of life tallied credits and debits. He had spent too greedily. Yet as doors clanged, his smile lingered thin. Trials require judges. Judges require coin. And somewhere far away, chests still hid under floorboards, keys held by shadows. Gold endures. In cell he sat, touched cut on finger, blood dried copper brown. He whispered to darkness, every piece moves. From sleeve seam, he shook loose single phoenix dragon, obsidian eye glinting. He flipped it, watching light wink between heads and tails, until torch outside guttered in coins glint, became the only dawn he owned.